register of voters. I hope all of you are registered. I say I hope all of you are registered. Because the change we need cannot be possible if you cannot vote. So if you are here and you don't have your PVC, you are not really you are not a change agent. In fact, you are not supposed to be here. In fact, you shouldn't be allowed to be here. But I'm sure all of you are. Then you must have very good voter education. A number of years ago, when we were trying to do a transition to democracy, I served as chairman of a mass mobilization unit under the under MAMSA in those days. So many years ago, but people still remember it. That was a voter education process. Because the voter is extremely important. He is the one that should know exactly what the procedure is, what the processes are, so that he's able to make up his or her mind properly. So voter education is very important. You have to let the voters know what is to happen, when, where, by who, so that they know exactly what the whole process, the process of how to come for the vote to be accredited, then to vote, and the vote to be counted, and the vote, everything the voter should know. So voter education is very, very important. And I do hope that this is the period that the media and INEC should really be engaging in voter education, because the voters must know exactly what is expected of them and what is to happen on election day. Then we must have security, peace and security. Democracy is not the rule of violence. You cannot, as it were, insist on your way through manipulation of violence. It has to be through peace and security, so that people can freely choose without any intimidation. Once people are intimidated, then the electoral process is not free and fair. It's the rule of might. But in a democracy, it's not the rule of might. As our lecturer will tell us, it's the rule of law. Let me hear you, it's the rule of law. That's what it is. And so we do want to also insist that the INEC should give in all the resources they require to have the appropriate technology and all the logistics to be able to really put across to us a very, very important set of electoral processes. So they shouldn't lack the funds to do their work. And then on election day, voter accreditation process must be near perfect. Nobody should be allowed to be able to choose or vote twice, or to introduce another. And believe me, one of the things that really is giving us encouragement is the new process by INEC to be able to identify each voter. We thank God for technology. We hope the technology will work on election day. Nobody should tell Nigerians that something faulty. We think that the BBS, which they brought out, all right, is good, is credible, but it should work. Nobody should come and tell us that the system is not working on that day. Give excuses so that we can go back to what we used to do. No. There is every opportunity this time around for the elections to be credible and fair. So please, if you are close to INEC, tell them the machine must work. Now finally, and this is what is also giving us tremendous encouragement, is that the former process of collation, you know, that is where all the trouble used to be. Collation. Something would have happened in the polling centers, but before they get to the collation center, something else happens. And so this electronic transmission of result is very, very important. And therefore there must be network. Well, I'm very, very delighted that there is network here this morning. So you are ready. Kindly listen to our guest lecturer and those who are going to comment. You are going to benefit immensely, and we hope and trust that you, as wonderful voters, would indeed bring into being the change that we need that will make Nigeria function excellently. I thank you very much for your attention.
I just heard Chief OZEKHOME say he's aging with grace, and I quite agree. Still energetic, still has the fire. Thank you for the standing ovation. He does deserve that. The event for today, we know we're going to start unpacking it from that powerful speech. When Professor Jerry GANA was speaking and he was talking about lives matters, I quite agree. On my radio show, I was asking the listeners, what do you think is the worth of a Nigerian life? And people called and said 100 million. I said, no, not the price by the bandit on the Nigerian life. But what do you think a Nigerian is worth? And all kinds of answers came in. I'm sure some of the answers will come during the course of our discourse today. So, for our paper presentation, we have two of our incredible speakers already comfortably seated with us here. And one will join us virtually from the US, that's Dr. Tcwnni. To start off with our main keynote speaker, sir, if it's not too much trouble, would want to read your citation and would love for you to stand as that is done. Thank you very much. Chief Dr. Mike OZEKHOME, San, C-O-N, is a leading constitutional lawyer, human rights activist, pro-democracy campaigner, senior advocate of Nigeria, I mentioned that, officer of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and the recent title that he received during the week, in which well-deserved, the Commander of the Order of the Niger. He's a bencher, senior advocate of the masses, voice of the people, senior advocate of Nigerian students, notary public of Nigeria, a patriot, pan-Nigerian, pan-Africanist, author, researcher, scholar, multi-columnist, philosopher and thinker, motivational speaker, social critic, public affairs analyst, pro-masses advocate, and Knight of the Order of St. Lumumba. OZEKHOME is a chartered arbitrator, mediator, conciliator, negotiator, and a whole lot more. I did mention that he's an author. He's authored numerous law books and many other dealing with sundry national issues, has handled many epochal cases that have helped define and shape the legal regime and Nigeria legal jurisprudence, thus contributing to the enthronement of a conducive environment for the sustenance of human rights, of democracy, good governance, and the rule of what? Law. Chief OZEKHOME is known to be an orator. He speaks the truth to power, to authority. He's fought impunity, challenged governmental excesses through court advocacy, and gives voice to the voiceless, also known as the defender of the poor. We did mention that he has handled, the National Conference, a conversation of 2025, 2029, and 2014, all aimed at retooling and re-engineering the weak fabric of a wobbly and tottering state. And at the 2014 National Conference, he was glowingly named the Cicero of the conference by the conference leadership due to his sterling performance. Chief OZEKHOME co-founded the Civil Liberties Organization, the first human rights organization in Nigeria. And in 1998, he co-founded the Joint Action Committee of Nigeria with the late Chief Gani Fawemi, who was the chairman who helped push out the then military junta. Chief OZEKHOME was the national vice chairman, publicity and publication, and earlier in 1992 solely founded the Universal Defender of Democracy, an international human rights league, and the Democratic Rights Agenda, also the Peace Initiative. This list is endless. but we'll take a few more. A Paul Harris Fellow of the Rotary International, Dr. OZEKHOME is an international ambassador of peace, honored with the award of Global Peace-Loving Citizen of the World, the highest honor awarded by the Universal Peace Federation. He's also a UN ambassador and honorary citizen and recipient of the Keys to the City of Atlanta, Georgia in 2002. And Dallas, Texas in 2002, amongst numerous international awards. And he's received over 400 awards, honors locally and internationally. We call him doctor because he has an academic Ph.D., doctorate, honorary, 12 honorary doctorate degrees also, 16 fellowship in different areas of professional endeavor. Dr. OZEKHOME is a counsel at the International Criminal Court, The Hague, the Netherlands. The legal and literary icon belongs to numerous bar associations across the globe, such as the International Bar Association, Commonwealth Lawyers Association, African Bar Association, Pan-African Lawyers Association, too numerous to mention. He's happily married with children. Please, let's welcome our keynote speaker, Chief Dr. Mike OZEKHOME. Okay.
Thank you. Sit down. God bless you all. Mr. Chairman, my very good friend, elder brother, a pan-Nigerian, very patriotic pan-Africanist, former minister, former Director General of MAMSA, who coined those beautiful words. If you are a director, then you have to be directing well. Ageless, or I should say is aging backwards. Professor Jerry GANA has become an icon, a recurring decimal in the convoluting issues that bedevil us on a daily basis in our contraption called Nigeria. We thank you, sir, for never giving up. Because without knowing it, you mentor and encourage a lot of us to know that there is something to live for in this country. That was why when they approached me that I should deliver this keynote address, I asked the question, who is the chairman? And they said, Professor Jerry GANA. Then I said, take it as done as early as yesterday. We thank you, sir. It's my honor and privilege to be under your tutelage again today. Dr. COSMAS ILECHUKWU, a man of God who labor in the vineyard of the Lord, whilst many of you are making money. We thank you, sir, for having anchored this for 11 years, using your personal resources so that we can have a better country. Many of your mates are busy buying private jets and boasting how many private jets they have. Do they really speak to Nigeria? Do they really speak to the issues of the moment? So it's rare to have a you, and that is where you should give him a round of applause. I would have said there was nothing to say again after that powerful opening remark by Professor Jerry GANA. He virtually said everything. He wrapped up today's topic. It is just that
We just have to add one or two issues to embellish it. Because if you put only tomatoes and tarudu and tatashe in soup without adding salt, it will still not be tasty. But I'm not going to take all your time so that I will not be like the professor who was to deliver a lecture. When he started the lecture, the hall was as full as this, over 200 people. He went on delivering the lecture. The audience started thinning down, 200 to 100, 80, 70, 50. He was still delivering the lecture. 40, 30 more people, only 20 remaining, 15, 10. The lecturer was still going on. 8, 5, 4, 3. The lecturer was still going on. 2. Then when he was about to round up, he looked at the audience and discovered that one person was remaining. He turned to the person and said, "I thank you for listening to this lecture." The man answered, "Sir, I am the porter waiting to lock the doors when you have gone." That is where, speaking about the change we need in Nigeria, which is being anchored by the Change We Need Nigeria Initiative, TCWNNI. I will have to start by saying, looking at the 2023 general elections and the critical success agents, we must have a little background of our historical perspectives, which our chairman did admirably. But just to add, you see, the problem we are having, sir, is that we are no longer having history in our syllabus. It was abolished since 2009. The shame of a country. A country without a history cannot have a future. It's not possible. The windscreen, the windshield of a car, of a vehicle, is very large so that you can see the front. But the makers of the car realize the importance of looking behind. That is why they have the side mirror that guides you to be looking at the back where you are coming from. Because today is the tomorrow we discussed yesterday. So we have lost it because we don't know our history. What is electoral process? It involves political parties, political activities, and the participants, which brings in a political system, which is a coordination of set principles, laws, ideas, and procedures relating to a particular form of government. All these are to do what? To have what you call democracy. Democracy that was defined by that great American president who helped to abolish the over 500 years slave trade, Abraham Lincoln. In his Gettysburg Declaration of 19th November 1863, that democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That means it is the people that must midwife it. When they midwife it for the people. And where is the democracy coming from? Of the people. It's coming from them. When a form of government is imposed on you, it is not democracy. That is why we detested military juntas. That was why Gani Fawemi led us We were few. You could count us on our fingertips that fought the military with bare knuckles. I suffered about 12 detentions during successive military juntas. Like you have from my citation, by the grace of God, I am the co-founder of the first human rights body in Nigeria, the Civil Liberties Organization, CLO, which we founded on the 15th of October, 1987. Do we practice democracy in Nigeria? I do not think so. Because it is a process that allows the rulers to be elected by their people. By going to the polls in Nigeria at a 4-yearly interval of rituals. Huntington, therefore, saw democracy as a political system which is considered democratic because it allows the most popular candidates to be thrown up and to govern you. It lays a solid foundation for governance. The people, therefore, are the owners of the power, not the elected or selected few, because the tail cannot wag the dog. It is a misnomer. The dog wags the tail. So when you send people to the National Assembly, to the Presidency, to the Senate, to the House of Reps, and then you call them rulers, hello, they are not your rulers, they are your servants. Because you gave them the power. That is why section 14, subsections 1, 2A, 1 and 2A of the 1999 Constitution said the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall be a state based on the principles of democracy and social justice. It is hereby accordingly declared that sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. So you are the one actually ceding your powers to the people who have today become state captors, rampaging buccaneers of power, elected or selected people with a bacchanalian propensity to consume, a rentier economy, virtually a failed state, where non-state actors now dictate to a legitimate government how and when and what should be done, with them planting flags on Nigerian soil, collecting taxes and giving passes to citizens, challenging the sovereignty and suzerainty of a sovereign state. That is a failed state, where non-state captors possess equal or even more fearsome and powerful instruments of violence than a legitimately constituted government. That is a failed state, where corruption has so ravaged us that we have become number 148 out of 180 most corrupt countries in the world, and the second most corrupt country in West Africa, where we have overtaken India as the poverty capital of the world, where by 2015 we were a country of a rebased economy of over $500 billion and one of the fastest growing economies in the world, where of Nigeria's 217.6 million people today by latest United Nations projections, we are living below poverty line. Is that the country our forefathers wanted for us? So when those our forefathers were fighting and they brought about the first election on the 9th of March 1922 for the Lagos colony, after the forceful amalgamation of northern and southern protectorates and the Lagos colony by Lord Lugard on the 1st of January 1914. We have never had a good sir. Indeed, your country called Nigeria has a foreign name, a name bequeathed to her by a foreigner, a young British journalist called Miss Flora Louisa Shaw, who wrote an article in the London Financial Times on the 8th of January 1897, saying, let's call, instead of saying Royal Niger Protectorates, it's too long a name, let us call it Niger area, Nigeria, that area around the Niger. That was how we got her name. And that young lady, sir, was later to marry Lord Lugard as his wife. So even your name is colonial. And guess what? Nigeria, formerly administered by the Royal Niger Company, had to be sold to the British government for the sum of £863,000. Sir, your country was bought for £863,000. That's how much we were worth. It was after the Berlin West African Conference for between 1845 and 1844 and 1846, where they came here and partitioned Africa. Oh boy, you are Britain. Which side you want now? Nigeria. What of you, German? I want the other side. Ah, Mr. French, where do you want? Portuguese, where do you want? So they shared Africa amongst themselves. So they started rewriting our history through the Western eye. Imagine them telling us that Mungo Park discovered the river Niger. How can you discover a river at Kainji, New Busa, where you met the people drinking water and taking their bath? You say you discover which river? So all those early discoverers, Clapperton, Landa Brothers, Mungo Park, Vasco da Gama, where they did well, including those they said they found the sea route to India. We bless them and their souls. But when they were lying against us, mosquitoes started dealing with them. That was why they called Africa the white man's grave, because they were dying in tons. So, those problems, sir, led us to the 1922 Clifford Constitution, which introduced election for the first time. We didn't go far. We had to have the 1946 Arthur Richards Constitution. It didn't help us. We had to have the 1951 Macpherson Constitution. We didn't go anywhere. We have to have the 1954 Littleton Constitution. Then the 1960 Independence Constitution. Then the 1963 Republican Constitution. Then the 1979 Obasanjo Constitution. Then the 1989 unused IBB Constitution. And then the 1999 Abdulsalami Abubakar Constitution, which is actually a schedule attached to Decree number 24 of 1999. How many of you remember that the 1999 elections were held without even a constitution? So the constitution lied, tells a lie about itself when it begins in its preamble by saying, we the people of Nigeria do hereby give to ourselves the following constitution. When? Where? How? We didn't. The format by which you get a constitution is even more important than the contents of the constitution. That is why a constitution to be legitimate and believable, it must be autochthonous, indigenous, derived directly from the people. Our constitution is not. This is a militarily imposed decree number 24. The problems we are having with our electoral process are many and gargantuan. Remember, after the 12th of December 1959 elections into regional and federal legislature, where voting was by secret ballot, three main parties, the Action Group, AG, the Northern People's Congress, MPC, and the NCNC, National Council of Nigeria, and the Cameroons. The parties were virtually tribal in nature. So problems started, leading to the Operation Wet Year of Western Nigeria, where the governor removed the then premier, with Chief Obafemi Awolowo, the leader of opposition, being charged for treasonable or treasonable felony, with people like Chief Anthony Nahoro, the man who in 1957, after failing in 1953, finally moved Nigeria's motion for independence. The problems have been on with us, and as far back as 1948, sir, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe told Ahmadu Bello, the Sardauna of Sokoto and Premier of Northern Nigeria, he said, let us forget our differences. Ahmadu Bello gave a very poignant answer. The grandson of Madame Fodio, the man who said, conscience is an open wound. Only the truth can heal it. Ahmadu Bello said, Zeke, we cannot forget our differences. You are an Igbo man, Easterner, and a Christian. I am a Fulani, a Northerner, and a Muslim. We cannot forget our differences. We will rather recognize our differences and then work with it and tolerate ourselves. He got it right. It's called the bullseye. So when Obafemi Awolowo said Nigeria was a piece of geographical expression, he was also right, because he said there are no Nigerians as you have Britons and Scots and Irish people. Mr. Chairman, sir, go around Nigeria on a Sunday, you will see towns unions everywhere having meetings, because they believe more in themselves than in a behemoth elephantine contraction that is on working at the center that they call Nigeria. So if you ask somebody, where are you from? He will not tell you I'm a Nigerian. He will just say, oh, I am from ILECHUKWU, near Agenebo there. It's called East Local Government Area of Edo State. It is when you now move far. But as the average American, where are you from? He will ask you, what do you mean? You mean where I was born? Or where I live? Or where I work? He may have been born in Atlanta, Georgia, brought up in New York, schooled in Chicago, and started working in New Jersey. So when you have a form, every form you want to fill, they start by asking you after your name. They ask for your gender. Even though they know you are a man, you have to put it that you are a man. In fact, one day I told them, I said, but you are seeing me as a man. Do you think my sex can suddenly change? Then they will ask you. They will say tribe. They will say religion. That's how we have fostered the problems on ourselves. And we seem not to be getting out of them. Sir, between May and September 1787, after the American became independent from Britain in 1777. They met in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 50 of them. They were already confederates, but they wanted a more perfect union to cede powers to a government at the center to protect them, so that all of them, everybody will be happy. 50. 39 of them signed a brand new constitution, which was given to the American people who had a referendum. So it became the People's Constitution. It was at that constitutional conference that great Americans were thrown up, including Washington, who became the first president of America, and after whom Washington, D.C. is named. That conference threw up the great federalists, people like Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, Madison, Jay. These were great Americans. It was at that conference they decided that they needed to have a federal setup, not confederation, to have presidentialism, to have 3 parts of government, a doctrine that had been earlier popularized in 1948 by Baron de Montesquieu, a great French philosopher, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. And to have what we call judicial review when there are problems, who decides the quarrel. That is how America came to be. So their constitution is still less than 8,000 words. It's a little document. But the Nigerian constitution is almost like a portmanteau. So the fundamentals of our problem starts from the fact that we never initially agreed to live together as one people. So if your union is not working, can't you sit down and discuss it? We came together in 2014, as our chairman said, 492 of us from all strata of Nigeria. We made over 600 recommendations. Those recommendations were locked up. Like he said, probably the government did not read them or did not even understand them if they read them. Had they been implemented, we won't be where we are today. We won't be operating a unitary system of government, which we call federalism, where your 36 commissioners for education go to Abuja at the end of every month to go and collect handouts under section 162 of the Constitution from Federation account. Give to the governors, who use most of it for security votes, and they wait for the next month. That is why I've said, sir, in many of my publications, that we do not practice democracy. I can tell you the types of forms of government we practice. 1, electionocracy. Electionocracy is a process where at 4 yearly intervals of rituals, Nigerians queue up to elect or select their leaders, who should be their servants, after they have been given 5,000 naira each for a ballot paper or small sachets of salt or rice. Then the elected governor uses the first 1 year going around thanking the people. God bless you all for voting me. Then he says he's identifying the projects. Then he uses the next year, second year, to do some projects. Pour sand here, gravel there. With the first rain, they are washed away. And the ceremonies with which they are heralded are more costly than the project themselves. The next 3rd year, electionary campaign has started. Of course, you all know that since last year, there have been campaigns. Is that not correct? For an election of 2019. By 2020, 2021, they had already started. So when did they govern you? When did they give you dividends of democracy? That's one form of government we practice. Another form of government we practice is judocracy. Judocracy is a system where the politicians quarrel, kill themselves, snatch ballot papers and ballot boxes, rig the elections. Then they go to the judiciary to quarrel. And then the judiciary comes in to midwife for you, your president, or your governor, or your senator, or your House of Rep members. That is why number 4 can become number 1. So your ballot papers are no longer counted, or where they are counted, they no longer count. That is judocracy. We also have executocracy. Executocracy is a form of government where the executive lords it over everybody. They see you and I as puppets, as slaves. They use 85% of national income for recurrent expenditure to massage their egos, make tea for themselves, their wives and their mistresses, and their gas at the top. Then they use 15 to 20% for capital projects. Then they terrorize you. Then they rule you with impunity. That is executocracy. Then we have legislocracy. Legislocracy is a system of government where your elected or selected lawmakers do everything except making laws for the peace, order, and good governance of Nigeria. They use their oversight functions, under sections 88 and 89 of the Constitution, to pad up their budgets. So when the executive say our budget is 18.5 trillion, they say no, we have more. You didn't look at it well. They begin to pad it until it becomes 19.7 trillion. Sir, which country is going to grow where we have borrowed for the next 3 generations? Where China has taken over your economy. Nigeria is virtually a commodity of China, where they are stealing over 75% of your oil, bunkering. They are suddenly discovering some pipelines running over 10 kilometers. What kind of country is that? Do you know what the governments successively, sir, have succeeded in doing to us? They practice what Stanley once told his followers. Stanley told his followers, you know, for you to really rule a people, you have to first pauperize them. Then they begin to have what you call the Stockholm syndrome. The Stockholm syndrome is a syndrome where a slave falls in love with his slave master. When the day breaks, he will call him and say, Oga, don't forget, you have not yet slapped me today. Oga, I'm here. Can you come and put your feet on my head? So Stanley told his followers. He brought out, he said, give me a chicken, a fowl. They brought the fowl. He started plucking out the feathers one by one. The fowl was crying, squeaking, screaming, one by one, bleeding. And he finished plucking the feathers one by one, and then dropped the fowl on the ground to go away. The fowl started dawdling away in pains. Then he put his hands in his pocket and brought out grains. Then he bent down and said, that fowl turned around and started feeding from his palms. Say, that is what you do to your followership. Pauperize them so that when you come to vote, Even for 2,000 naira, they will agree to vote for you because they are hungry. Mr. Chairman, sir, so much for the history and our problems that have brought us to our knees today. We have seen electoral malpractices. Alpha Begori said, let me give you some examples of the complaints that were commonly made before tribunals with regard to the 2007 election, apart from voter intimidation and release of doctor results. There were fictitious names in voters' register. Several unknown names in the register, like Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson. We have just seen that in Imo State. You are having names like McGregor, maybe Mongo Park, Clapperton, Landa Brothers. Maybe, in fact, there is a name there, Elizabeth II. Possession of ballot boxes and papers by politicians kept illegally in private homes preparatory for the election. Private printing of voters' cards. Stuffing of ballot boxes. Using subterfuge and deceit to store ballot boxes with materials. Multiple voting. Arranging for agreeable persons to vote as many times as possible. So what they do, they bring the ballot papers. They put it like 10 people in a room. They have the stamp. Their job is just to be doing like bam, 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 bam. That's what they will do till daybreak. That is you supposedly voting for your leaders. What a shame. So the emergence of Nigerian political parties are not anchored on any clearly defined ideology or ideological basis. In America, before you see a person ever cross from the Democratic Party to the Republican, it must be taken as a serious matter. So people like Ross Perot would rather stay with his Green Party, even if he knew he was not going to win, than cross over. Because you can even become a councillor in your county council. Is better. You can be a big fish in a small river rather than being a small fish in a big river. We don't have any clearly defined something. IBB tried to do it by trying to legislate into being two political parties. A little to the left, a little to the right. It didn't work. You do not legislate a people's will. That is why we still continue to say the election that brought in Abiola as president of Nigeria, who was killed in Aso Villa in suspicious circumstances, still unknown till tomorrow, was the most popularly elected president ever in this country. Even on a Muslim ticket with Babagana Kingibe, they defeated Alhaji Bashir Tofa in all the polling units, even in his Jadi Albasa ward in Kano, near Zoo. The military in barracks, the police in barracks, children, men, women, they all voted for Abiola. But they killed him. They decided that he will not govern you and I with his farewell to poverty mantra. So when they told him to relinquish his mandate, he said, you see, Tcwnni and Neni, you see, I cannot relinquish a mandate which is not mine. This mandate belongs to the people of Nigeria. And you cannot give out that thing which is not your own. They continue to, in fact, Walter Carity said, I should have waited. He's only a madman that waits in front of a moving train. He will be crushed. So when Chief CWNNI asked him, Basharu, you left Nigeria, you didn't even tell us. He said, you see, Tony, let me tell you this. A bird does not tell another bird that a stone is coming. He simply flies away. I was already in the air before I discovered that even my passport was not with me. but because they knew me, they allowed me to land. That was the man we lost to electoral, not to electoral violence, but to government violence in manipulating the will of the people. That was to lead to the interim government of Sheraton, then Abacha. The rest, as they say, is history. So we therefore have the Nigerian state as the arena of electoral contest, but without good results to help the people. So when people talk about democracy dividends, I ask the question, is a word from the corporate world. Have you ever already had democracy profits? Because it's from profits that you share dividends. Sir, we don't even have democracy profits. Not to talk of dividends to be shared out of profits. Weak democratic institutions, negative political culture, a weak constitutional legal framework, the lack of independence and capacity of the umpire, the INEC. When Mr. President, who is a sitting president, puts a person forward as the chairman of INEC, how can he be independent? How can you be independent of your yoga at the top? And then you are bringing people as electoral commissioners, many of them who are known card-carrying members of the political parties. Have you ever seen maggots win a war in the presence of lizards? It's not possible. Have you ever seen a person so difficult to wake up as somebody who is pretending to be asleep? Hello? When the market is on fire, even the blind will know. Because even in their blindness, they will see flashes. The deaf will know. Because they will be hearing the crackings. The numb will know. Because if they cannot feel it, they can see it. Even the lame will know. Because those who would have helped to carry them will take to their lives. For their lives. The Nigerian fire is on. And you think we are not in problems? We're in a conundrum. Let no one deceive you. So when I hear all of them campaigning, whether on social media or print media, Peter Obi, Atiku Abubakar, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, whether you are Tinubulizing or articulating or you are obedient, I can tell you none of them can solve the problems of Nigeria, because the system is rotten, it is systemic, it is ingrained, it has to first change. You have to first go to fundamentals. Sir, if your house is cracking and you look at the tree in your house, that it is what is leading to the cracks, you don't go and cut off the branches, because they will grow again. What do? You go to the taproot and remove the taproot. Then it will stop growing. Hook, line, and sinker. But Nigeria is treating a serious ailment like leprosy with medicine, drug, a balm meant for eczema. We should be like Naaman the leper that dipped himself into River Jordan 7 times and became cleansed of his leprosy. That means we must have a people's constitution, an autonomous, people-driven constitution, subjected to a referendum and a plebiscite of the people. It was done on the 10th of August 1963 when the Midwest region was created out of Western region through the help of people like Oba Akezwa II, Dr. Dennis Osadebe, Jereti Mariri, Oketiebo, Kesiti Momo, Esogbai Debiri. It was done in Libya, a new people's constitution. It was done in Egypt. It was done in Afghanistan. It was done in Iran after the Iranian Revolution of 1979. It was done in Iraq. It was done in South Africa. It was done in Eritrea. It was done in Tunisia. So who is afraid of a new people-driven constitution? Why should we be afraid of it? Until we look at that, then we have not started. A new constitution, a constitution being the identity card of a nation, must define the relationship of the people, intersect. That is why you have the present problem, because nobody believes in Nigeria. Mutual suspicion, religious intolerance, tribal jingoism, electoral malpractices, corruption, parlous economy, insecurity, where armed bandits, kidnappers, they go to your farms, they kill, they maim, they rape our mothers, they rape our daughters, they rape our sisters, and nothing happens to them. Kidnappers take your children and they dictate to you, the parents, that for them to feed your children, you must buy them bags and baskets of tarodo, tomatoes, tatashe, beans, millet, rice, palm oil, vegetable oil, salt, even Maggi cubes, so as to feed your children, so that they will live for you to pay ransom. Hello? What country grows like that? So we are on a fire tinderbox. We are on a precipice. And yet we are deceiving ourselves. We have seen some electoral reform changes. Some of them introduced in the Electoral Act of 2022. I'm sorry, sir, I will soon round up so that I don't take too much of your time. I'm grateful, sir, for the extra time you appear to have added, even without my asking. The new Electoral Act in Section 3, which establishes INEC, particularly in 3.3, stipulates that election funds due to the Commission for any general election are to be released not later than 1 year before the next general elections. I'm not aware whether even as we speak, they have released the funds for 2023 elections. If they have, maybe a little part of it. How do you want INEC to make omelette without breaking an egg? Extension of time frame for publication of election notice. It used to be 90 days. It has been extended to 360 days in section 28 subsection 1 of the new Electoral Act of 2022. Encouragement of early party primaries. Section 29 takes care of that. It is now 180 days to campaign before the general elections. instead of the former 60 days. Extension of time frame for campaigns by political parties, section 94, subsection 1. It used to be 50 days and to end 24 hours prior to the day. That is what it is now. Provisions for central electronic voter database, which is the register of new voters. Section 9 says that the commission shall keep the register of voters at the national headquarters, and that it shall be kept in electronic format in a central database, in addition to being kept in manual or hard copy, as we used to have it only. This will promote transparency, no doubt. Revision of overvoting. Section 51, subsection 2. Now, overvoting now means any polling unit that extends the number of accredited voters, not as it used to be, the number of registered voters. It's now the number of accredited voters. If the number that are voted exceeds it, then there's overvoting. Before now, they used to say number of registered voters. That's an improvement in section 51, subsection 2. Section 65, subsection 1. The power of INEC to review the decision of the returning officer in respect of question. It can do this within 7 days. So that if, for example, returning officers are forced at gunpoint to announce results, and there's evidence of that, INEC headquarters can now say, no, that election was not free, fair, and transparent. They can revise it. It didn't used to be like that. It's now in section 65, subsection 1. Exclusion of political appointees from acting as voting delegates. That was the most contentious section 84, subsection 12. Although I didn't agree with them, I wrote against it. You are saying a political appointee like a minister or a personal aide, because it's a political appointee, can no longer vote or be voted for. What of the senators who are themselves sitting, House of Rep members, House of Assembly, chairmen of local, who are still sitting in power, but are also voting and being voted for? That is not a fair electoral process. Death of electoral candidates. This has generated a lot of problems, but section 34, subsection 1 now says that before the commencement of polls, a candidate, if he dies, the election shall be postponed and shall be commenced within 14 days of the candidate's death. And then, but it should not be suspended for more than 21 days. Technological changes. We will find that in section 47. Smart card, electronic voting machines, and then electronic transmission of results. So that as you vote, it's living there immediately, virtually simultaneously to a central database, so that people will no longer be able to manipulate it there and add 00. Somebody who has 100, they add 00 and becomes 10,000. That's what we used to say. You will even see it. But because the electoral process is weighted against a person who challenges the election, you will need to go and call more than 5,000 people to come and prove it. In this new coming electoral year, I pray to God that the cases that should come to me will be to defend a candidate who has won, not to challenge a candidate who has won. Because of the serious problems associated with it. I'm not just giving to damage assessment, sir. I can provide some solutions very quickly. Have a virile INEC, devoid of corruption. Pay them well. Remove stooges, because they are the umpires. When a referee in a football match becomes biased, then one side must win the side he prefers. The electorate must be fully educated and informed. We have an illiterate electorate who believe that by buying your vote for 5,000 at least it can take care of me and my children for the next 1 week. They do not know that they're actually selling their next 4 years. We should shun it through mass voter education. We must ensure that votes are not only counted, but that they also count, because the will of the people is expressed through those votes. We must embrace technology in a very serious way and manner, to the extent that even voters will be in a position to also shoot their own votes to a central database, so that if INEC or its officials or political parties are trying to hide some votes, the other votes will still pop up. I'm actually done. God bless you. We should allow a system where Nigerians, wherever they are, they should be able to cast their votes. Right now, it is so sickening, so outdated, that it is the place where you registered that you must vote. That was why during the 2019 election, which was suddenly jacked up, cancelled by the federal government and postponed for a week, the people who had already gone to their villages to go and vote, they returned to their bases. They could not go back a second time. So the mass majority of Nigerians were disenfranchised. We therefore need to have a system where even if you registered in Abuja, because it is already in the system, you can vote in Kauran Namuda, you can vote in Chibok, you can vote in Agenebode, you can vote elsewhere. Voters registration should be a continuous exercise. I'm surprised that INEC stopped it, and I've gone to court challenging INEC that you are disenfranchising many Nigerians who have not still registered. Some of them came up and became 18 in the last 3-4 months. Allow them to register. You say, oh no, you see, we don't have the time again. So I'm in court against INEC. They should allow every Nigerian to vote. I also think we now need a special court to judge electoral cases, punish people who have committed electoral fraud, ban them for the next 10 years from ever coming with their lecherous hands into a political space. Disincentivize the populace from selling their votes. That means empower the people, leave good legacy, give good governance. What is my conclusion? Election matters belong to the citizenry and the government. We must have a virile civil society. Thomas Jefferson once told us, sir, he said, where a government fears the people, then there is rule of law. But where the people fears the government, then there is tyranny reigning supreme. Learned Hans added, the only price we have to pay for our liberty is eternal vigilance. Nigerians, do not take your leaders for granted. Hold them accountable, transparent, and responsible to the people of Nigeria, who are the masters whilst they are the servants. God bless Nigeria. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that powerful presentation. Chief Dr. Mike OZEKHOME. Indeed, you know why they call him an orator. It was meant to be 20 minutes, but we're all listening and time went by. I take responsibility for that. I was so engrossed in what he was saying, I did not realize that I was meant to moderate. Please, let's appreciate him one more time. And we're going to have a quick panel after we're done with the next speaker. There are some critical questions that need to be asked. I will try as much as possible to stick to the clock. We'll try as much as possible to stick to the clock and not to... No, I haven't. I have. All right, let's call on our next speaker. And like Chief said, while others were jostling for a private jet, he was walking. He rolled his sleeves up to ensure that the change we need, that we get it. It's taking a lot of work. Keynote speaker said there is a systemic problem that needs to be changed, so we need time to fix it. And our next speaker has committed time, resources and all to achieving that. Okay, so coming next, hopefully for 20 minutes and not more, so that we can have a robust panel session. Let's welcome Dr. COSMAS ILECHUKWU. Please, ILECHUKWU, big sir, if you just stand. He's the general overseer of the Charismatic Renewal Ministries. He's the founder and chairman of the African Center for Christian Leadership, former chairman of Christian Association of Nigeria, Imo State. He was the vice president, Southeast, of the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, and presently the general secretary of Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria. He's also the chairman, Global Governing Council of the International Ministers Fellowship, a global network of churches and ministries in over 23 countries in Africa, UK, and the United States of America. He's on the board of the reference of Oral Roberts University, Tulsa, USA, and a member of the Governing Council of West Africa Theological Seminary in Lagos. An avid reader, prolific writer, gifted teacher of the word. He's been in ministry for close to 4 decades. Dr. ILECHUKWU has authored several books, including Understanding the Ministry of Intercession, Pray or Perish. I know we're praying. Breaking Forth with Kingdom Power, You Can Make the Difference, and a whole lot more. He's married with children and doing amazing work. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. ILECHUKWU to come speak to this.
Praise the Lord. You can take your seat, please. You shall be well with us all. Having listened to the presentations of our professor, and having listened to the presentation of a man of outstanding erudition, a lawyer par excellence, I keep wondering whether there is still anything that I need to say. It's not better for us just to discuss what has been said, and because I don't know what is in this thing that hasn't been mentioned. But just to fulfill all righteousness, let me run through this quickly. God bless you. We are discussing the critical success agents in the coming election. We have witnessed quite a number of elections in this country, and we have known where we failed, and we have also noticed where we succeeded. Let me leave up the introduction here and go down to mention some of the things I consider to be critical issues. The success of the coming election will depend on some critical agents. The principal among them will include the electorate, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, the security agents, the political parties and the candidates, the electoral tribunals and courts, the federal government itself, the media and civil organizations, civil society organizations, and of course, ultimately God. These are the factors I considered critical in determining the course and the outcome of the election we are preparing for. First of all, the electorate. By that we mean the voting public, people that are going to be there to cast their votes to determine who leads. These are the primary people that, what I can consider the primary agents in this coming election. Because if after all the preparations and people did not show up at the polling booths to vote, election will not take place. According to INEC, 67.42 million people registered to vote in 2015, but only 29.4 million voted. And that gives us 43%, about 43.65% of the voters turnout. In 2019, 84 million people registered to vote, and only 28.61 million people actually voted. And that gives us voters turnout of 35%, which to me is not encouraging, but Dr. OZEKHOME has explained to us possibly what would have been responsible, for that low turnout of voters. These figures suggest that general apathy towards election in Nigeria. In the last presidential election in Kenya, about 14 million people out of a total registered voters of 22 million voted. And that gave us 65.4% voters participation. In 2020 presidential election in Ghana, 77.85% voters participation was recorded. Now we are looking forward to a time in Nigeria where we will have such massive participation, having up to 70 or 80% of Nigerian registered voters to cast their votes in the election. That will be a beautiful day for us. Because the more people we get out there to go and vote, the more credible the elections will be. And so we need to encourage our populace. Those of us that have people under our control, either as pastors or leaders of different categories, the onus is on us to encourage our people to go out there to vote. And by also our showing the example, by going out there to vote ourselves. I have never failed to vote in all the elections that ever took place in Nigeria in my adult time. Not one have I missed. Because I feel it's important and necessary for me to also contribute in deciding who rules us. This ministry, Charismatic Renewal Ministry, is wholeheartedly and fully involved in all of this. We do not only do these lectures to encourage people on the issues that are of national importance. We also have what we call the CRM Political Academy that actively encourages people to get into politics and raises them and trains them and equips them. That's why a couple of our members this year are contesting elections. And I like that. The next factor, critical agent, is the Independent National Electoral Commission. The absolute independence of the Electoral Commission is imperative. We have known cases where they didn't became altogether independent, and that caused a lot of trouble. So we need them to demonstrate their integrity by being unbiased umpire. When the integrity of the body charged with the responsibility of conducting election is in question, the outcome of that election will be questionable and will bring a lot of dissatisfaction in the hearts and minds of the Nigerian people. We have had cases in the past when the government in power leveraged their influence over INEC to give result, declare as winners people who didn't win election. A good example was the election in Anambra, governorship election in Anambra State in 2003, where the election was given to the PDP with Governor Ngige as the candidate, when it was obvious, everybody in Anambra State at that time knew that the IPAC candidate of P2B won that election landslide. But for one reason or the other, Ngige was called and declared the winner. It took a long and protracted court case to get that election rectified, and thank God it happened. Well, we have another of such case where the influence of the ruling of the government did not allow honesty to prevail and did not allow INEC to say what it should say, to give us the election as they saw it, and it was a very dangerous one. In Imo State, during the last senatorial election, one person won the election, and everybody knew he won the election, but the election was changed under gunpoint, and government didn't do anything about it. And so we have a wrong senator representing that zone in our Senate today, other than the young man who clearly won the election before everybody. Another concern with the INEC is the issue of their preparation in terms of logistics. We now have about 176,846 polling units in Nigeria. INEC must find a way to send out their staff and materials to these places on time to make sure that the election will take place as and when due. So a lot of things depend on INEC in this election, and we are praying and wishing that they will live up to expectation so that Nigeria will have a free and fair election. The next success agent is the security. When people are not secure, they won't go and vote. When people are threatened that if they vote for their candidates, they will be punished, they won't go and vote. When people are not sure that they can go out there and freely cast their votes and go home peacefully, they may not be able to encourage to vote. So we must make sure that our security system is intact. We must have our police vigilant to make sure that everybody who wants to vote is allowed to vote and is protected. The INEC staff should be protected. The ballot box and all the things that needed for the election, the materials, will also be protected. So we must have a very active and vigilant security agents to make sure that all these things are not hampered and we have a good election. Political parties and their candidates, when political parties and candidates decide to be honest and be good, which I doubt they will have a good election. When people are not allowed to come out freely and vote without being coerced, without being threatened, without being bought over, election cannot be said to be good. So let's believe God and pray hard that political parties will play their game. After they have campaigned, let them allow the people to make their choice. They cannot force individuals. This idea of publicly giving people money to go and vote for them and dashing them rice and gari, government must find a way to stop it. Because as far as I'm concerned, they are not allowing people to exercise their free will in doing their election, in casting their votes. So political parties and the candidates must behave and be good people to enable the election to go on well. The electoral tribunals and courts, it's obvious in this country that the courts are more powerful than the populace, than the electorate, when it comes to determining an election. Look at what happened in Imo State in the last election. I played a very active role in that election because I was the chairman of the concerned church leaders, which comprise all the church leaders in Imo State, every one of them. And we worked hard to make sure we got and exercises his presidential authority to support the election that took place. And there was peace in Nigeria. Government has a lot of role to play to make sure we have good, peaceful, and quiet elections. We must insist on that. The civil society and the media is what they tell the people that people often believe. The idea of publishing results before the official one came out by the media is not correct. Let there be discipline this time around. We should encourage the media to report only what is correct and what is rectified and certified. And the civil society should take up the challenge. If there are problems, let them take it up and fight for the people. That's why they are there. They are civil society. They are there protecting the interest of the generality of the people. They should take it up and fight for the people and make sure that the right things are done. Finally, we must know that after we have done everything, done all the planning, done all the praying, done all the elections, if God did not bless our efforts, it will be in vain. So we must not forget the influence of God in all of this. You see, God is the governor of nations. The government of the countries of the world lies on the shoulder of God. He decides who rules. He decides who will not rule. So we must not forget in all of this to make prayer the cornerstone of all our efforts. Yes, we will plan. Yes, we will do everything necessary to be done. But we must get God involved. For unless the Lord builds a house, he is working in vain who is building it. Let's not forget. Let's do all our lectures, do all our mobilization, do all our votings. But don't ever relent in prayer. With prayer, things can work out. With prayer, we can get a government that we can go back and say, that 2014 report from the conference, let's pick it up and see what we can do about it. It can happen. None of those things they are still there. And we can have a government with God's intervention who can help to put this country back together. After all, where we are today is the work of a government. Another government can come and reverse what we have today, and Nigeria will be in good order. So don't ever be discouraged. Don't relent in your prayers, and God will one day answer us and us in Jesus' name. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. ILECHUKWU. And I noticed that you really help us manage time, bringing us back on track. We appreciate you for that, sir. Thank you very much. We also have a third speaker who joined virtually. And she also will just have a quick presentation to make on the critical change agent for our elections. Joining us virtually is Dr. Ene Obi, Chair, National Election Situation Room, and the Country Director, Action Aid Nigeria. You're welcome, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. So, can I start?
Yes, ma'am. You have 15 minutes.
Oh, Okay. Thank you very much for having me. I don't know why the voice is echoing. Okay, the chairman of the occasion, very distinguished and the organizers, thank you for Nigeria. when you see another Nigerian, wherever, if you come from Sokoto and you see somebody from Cross River State, you will go even 1,000 miles to go and search for that person, because it's like the person who is born of the same mother with you. The quality of Nigeria. Is it the food that Nigeria shares? Is it the diversity in that element that makes us whole? So it's very, very important for us to look at our quality as citizens. The office of the citizen is the highest office in the land. Are you making use of it before you point fingers at somebody? We are going into this election too. Women are not on the ballot box. Very few. You have about 9,000 seats being contested, and about 1,000 women are contesting or thereabout. We tried with the gender bills, hoping that that will correct the imbalance of representation in our elections like is done in other climes. We tried to bring this on board, and the National Assembly threw it off. It's like women are not supposed to be, they are supposed to be heard and so on. And so very devastating it was. We protested at the gate of the National Assembly, locked the main gate down for 10 legislative days, which was like 4 weeks. We have not won, but we need to build ourselves. We need to build up towards the next election. And I think if women and the youth come together, we will choose whoever we want, and it will not be a begging matter. It will not be pleading. We don't have to plead, because the Federal Character Commission was used to correct the imbalance of our representation in the national lives of the political or of the public service. The same can be used. Women who manage homes, you feel they are not, they don't qualify enough, because at the National Assembly, you have at the Senate, you have 109. There are only 8 women. At the House of Representatives, you have 360, only 13 women. And this is what we have. And so we are worried about that. Women are not in the scheme of things. The beauty of a decision in the boardroom is the many people that contribute to the decision. And the quality of the decision that comes out is who is in the boardroom, who is deciding for women. About 11 houses of assembly, there is not a single woman. And you have women committees chaired by men. Which man can tell what happens in the labor ward? And so women go through a lot of pains. When you are hearing of the crisis of the conflicts that we're having, so many people dying here and there, some people have been killed, you hear them in a data. But for the woman, it is not in a data, because an umbilical cord of a woman is cut when one child dies. And you can imagine the pain to raise children. And now women are facing gender-based violence. The kidnapping, there are so many women, young girls that were kidnapped, and they came back with pregnancies.